Porpoising seems to be the buzzword of F1 in 2022. Only 4 races down in the season, we can conclude that some teams are better at handling porpoising than other teams. But why is that? You'll be surprised to hear it's not all about the aerodynamics of the car. Ferrari seem to have gotten things just right this year, even though they've been seen porpoising a lot. Whilst Mercedes seem to have gotten a lot of things wrong this year, losing out on a lot of performance because of porpoising. What if Ferrari do so well this year that they seem somewhat unstoppable even with the porpoising? And why does Mercedes struggle so much? We're going to find out in today's video. So why is porpoising disastrous for Mercedes but not for Ferrari? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the difference between Ferrari and Mercedes when it comes to porpoising. Sit back and relax, this one is going to be full of information. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let's get into it. By now, we probably all know what porpoising is. But to quickly recap on the phenomenon, the vehicles bounce a lot when the underfloor aero stalls, lifting the car and then lowering it again, with the drivers' heads bouncing around as well due to the motion and the impacts of the floor on the track surface. As you can imagine, the drivers are not a big fan of the problem, with even some drivers complaining about physical pain after racing in the newest F1 cars. Who? You'll find out later in the video. Porpoising is a consequence of the all-new regulations that took effect this year. This phenomenon can heavily affect the performance and thus the lap time of the cars. But whilst both Ferrari and Mercedes are suffering a lot of porpoising on track, the latter is the only one that's deemed uncompetitive. A lot of cars on track are seen porpoising, some worse than others, but most of the teams have been able to mitigate the problem. Why isn't Mercedes able to handle the problem correctly? When it comes to porpoising on the straights, it isn't a major issue. What's important is that it does not cause damage to the vehicle or cause the driver to be shaken beyond their tolerance. Beyond that, what matters is the potential downforce surrendered by the additional ride height to minimize the problem, as well as the dynamic impact on the car in the quicker corners. And this is exactly where Mercedes are losing a lot of time. Right now, they have to increase the ride height of the car to an extreme, so they don't suffer a lot from porpoising in the quicker corners. This is causing a performance deficit for the W13, as the drivers are not able to attack the corners correctly because of 1. An increased ride height thus losing downforce, and 2. Porpoising in the corners, which causes balance shifts while turning. This makes it extremely hard for the drivers to go into the corners at full speed, which results in a lot of lap time lost. Even Mercedes driver George Russell commented on the phenomenon back in Australia, saying, "I don't have the confidence to attack with the bouncing. It's such a unique feeling from within the car, and when the car's going up and down, you cannot throw it into those high-speed corners." Right now, the Mercedes team are not sure what's causing the porpoising problems, but they are sure that the porpoising is costing them a lot of lap time, especially in the faster corners. And this is exactly where Ferrari is gaining a lot of its advantage this season. We'll get into that in a second. What do you think of the problems Mercedes are currently having? Do you think they'll be able to overcome these problems soon enough to join the title race? Let us know in the comments below. Why is porpoising not necessarily a bad thing? Well, porpoising is mostly occurred at high speeds, hence why we see the most cars bouncing on the straights. Because the bouncing isn't providing an increase or decrease in performance on the straights, it isn't necessarily a big issue for most of the cars if the porpoising doesn't damage the car by slamming against the track surface too hard, or shakes a driver beyond what they can endure without harm or pain, even if it costs a little straight line speed. Lando Norris from McLaren said the following about porpoising. "We don't have much porpoising, but porpoising is not necessarily a bad thing. For some cars, they're gaining performance from the thing which causes the porpoising. This may give us the impression that some teams and drivers are willing to endure the porpoising if it doesn't hurt them too much. As the thing that might be causing some of the teams like Ferrari a lot of performance could be the same thing that's causing them to porpoise a lot. But why does the F175 seem to have no decrease in performance while porpoising? And what have they done to work around the problem better than Mercedes have done? Let's find out. Ferrari appears to be able to cope better with this level of porpoising since it can move out of the bouncing phase faster, and hence not be hindered as much in the corners. But why is that? So both Mercedes and Ferrari are porpoising, and based on data released by F1 on its website, it appears that the Ferrari was bouncing even more aggressively than the Mercedes. This was supported by the published data that indicated that the vertical G-force sustained by the Ferrari was actually slightly higher than the Mercedes at its most severe. But the key differences will be twofold. To begin with, Mercedes has compromised its ride height more to get the porpoising down to this level. Ferrari will have made compromises as well, but if Mercedes increases its ride height more, it sacrifices significantly more downforce. Second, the Ferrari is more settled in the corners, which is likely due to the higher speed at which porpoising kicks in, opposed to the lower speed with Mercedes. However, the suspension systems also play a role in controlling the porpoising and recovering entering a corner. And with the 2022 cars featuring a simplified suspension systems without hydraulic assistance or inertias, Ferrari might also be doing a better job mechanically. Next to this, with the F175, Ferrari has gone for a strong aero concept, with the big flat sides, dish top, and the way the undercuts work. And this is not trying to create the most downforce as you might see with the Mercedes concept or even the Red Bull. They've tried to reduce drag as much as possible, which is an interesting approach. The regulations tend to drive you down that route quite the opposite of what Mercedes or Red Bull have done. The flat sides then manage the airflow by keeping the front tyre wake away from the back of the car while simultaneously regulating the airflow around the rear tyres, which is the key thing that reduces drag. That dish top with the louvers in it is all trying to create airflow towards the beam wing, so it's a strong concept that's proven to work. But the key aspect is how low drag that Ferrari is. It's allowing them to turn up the downforce without being a sitting duck on the straights. What do you think of the Ferrari F175? Do you think it's the best car on the grid right now? Let us know in the comments below. So what exactly are Mercedes saying about their car and the problems? After the Emilia-Romagna GP, George Russell stated the following about the W13. When the car is in the right window and the tyres are in the right window, the car, except for the bouncing, feels really good to drive. But the bouncing, it really takes your breath away. It's the most extreme I've ever felt it. I really hope we find a solution, and I hope every team struggling with the bouncing finds a solution, because it's not sustainable for the drivers to continue. This is the first weekend that I've been truly struggling with my back, and almost like chest pains from the severity of the bouncing. It's just what we have to do to go and do the fastest laps. That doesn't sound promising for the upcoming races, as the porpoising is now also taking its toll on the drivers. Toto Wolff said the following about the W13 porpoising and performance problems after the Australian GP earlier this year. Our bouncing is worse in the sense that we're carrying it into the corners, into the high speed. We see where we lose the performance. Is curing the bouncing miraculously unlocking a second within the car? No, surely not. But there's many other little improvements that we can make on weight, and a few others where we can optimize. You know how it is in F1. You just need to chip away the small gains whilst understanding the car, and I'm optimistic that eventually we're going to get there. Whether that's in 2 races or 5 or by the end of the season, I don't know, but we need to stay humble. My time horizon is not a race weekend or a year, it's more like 10 years. I want to look back and have a competitive team, and there'll be years where it's more difficult, and this is one. Right now, Mercedes is dealing with a complicated situation, and the solution is unlikely to be simple. In this case, the symptoms are easy to identify, but the source and hence the therapy are not. However, the contrast of Ferrari and Mercedes in the races demonstrates that the presence of porpoising, which all teams must cope with to some level, is not a guarantee of battles. What is evident is that Mercedes has done a poor job of understanding and resolving its porpoising issues, and Ferrari have been able to get the best out of their car while having the porpoising problem visibly present. That's all for today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this video entertaining. Also, comment down below what subject you want us to cover in the next videos. We'll see you in the next one.